Thank you, Harris. We'll take it from there. Top of the new hour. The temperature in the Middle East is rising again after the UAE said Iran fired 4 missiles towards it this morning. And moments ago, President Trump speaking to Fox on the situation in the Strait. So we've got breaking news to top the hour for you. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. Larry Kudlow is in for John Roberts and will join us here shortly. This is America Report. So let's get right to the news. And Trey Yingst, he's got that for us. Trey just spoke with President Trump moments ago. He's live from Tel Aviv for us. Hello, Trey.
Sandra, good afternoon. I spoke with President Trump for 20 minutes about the situation with Iran. He talked about Project Freedom and the U.S. efforts to guide vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, issuing a new warning to the Iranian regime, saying if the Iranians try to target U.S. ships in this area, they will be, quote, blown off the face of the earth. Remember, this was a project implemented by the Americans overnight to assist the hundreds of vessels that are currently trapped in the Persian Gulf. We're talking about more than 20,000 sailors. And the president told Fox he's doing this for humanity. Some of these sailors were running out of food and supplies on these vessels due to the Iranian threats that are ongoing in this area. And again, the president saying that if U.S. ships in the region are targeted, the Iranians will be blown off the face of the earth. Now, I also asked President Trump about the possibility of negotiations with Iran succeeding. He said the Iranians are being far more malleable than they were being in the past, showing flexibility given the U.S. pressure that continues as part of the American blockade of Iranian ports. President Trump called that blockade the greatest military maneuver in history. As it relates to the combat preparations that continue across the region, President Trump understands there are two paths here. The Iranians either make a good faith deal or ultimately combat operations could resume. And President Trump told Fox News that right now they have bases all over the world. There are American preparations underway. He said they're all stocked with equipment and we can use all of that stuff. And if he needs it, he will use it. But the headline here, Sandra, the president issuing a new warning to the Iranian regime if they do fire on U.S. vessels in the Persian Gulf or near the Strait of Hormuz. And today we can report, according to CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, there were multiple attempts on American vessels and merchant ships in this region. And Cooper says that there were U.S. efforts to shoot down both missiles and drones in the Persian Gulf as these Iranian efforts to attack vessels in the region continue. Sandra?
All right. So, Trey, is it fair to say you got a sense of optimism as this continues from President Trump in that phone call?
Yeah, absolutely. The president is in charge here in terms of not only the negotiating table, but also the U.S. military posture across the region. You have the excellence of the U.S. Navy on display here. And the president even talked about how just 2 weeks ago, there was that vessel that tried to break through the U.S. blockade. And ultimately, American forces fired into the engine room after giving the vessel 4 separate warnings. And it stopped that vessel in its tracks. And this is a display of what will happen if the Iranians try to test the U.S. blockade. So far, it's been quite successful in stopping these vessels, specifically from Iranian ports. Remember, this is very important to note here. The United States is not trying to stop any sort of merchant vessels who are going through the Strait of Hormuz. They're actually trying to help these vessels make their way through this area despite the Iranian threats. It's the vessels that are coming from Iranian ports that are being stopped. And we're talking about a lot of oil that is currently in the Persian Gulf that now the United States has control over when and where it moves. And the president talked about this as well. The Iranians tried to put pressure on the United States and the military in the region, and their plan backfired. And ultimately, that led to President Trump controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And that is what we are seeing right now. Iranian ports are totally stopped at this moment. They cannot move vessels out through the Strait of Hormuz due to the U.S. Navy blockade. And the president now is issuing this new warning to the Iranian regime if they try to escalate in the Persian Gulf.
All right, Trey, we'll get brand new reaction to that. Trey, thank you. Joining us live from Tel Aviv. Mike Jernigan is a retared Marine colonel and a Heritage Foundation visiting fellow. Colonel, welcome to you. Get your reaction out of the gate there to President Trump and the news. A warning to Iran, if it attacks those U.S. vessels, they'll be blown off the face of the earth. Also adding that they have become much more malleable. Your thoughts on this moment?
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. I think what we're seeing is that what the president said is the actuality of the United States Navy enforcing a blockade, as opposed to the theoretically of the Iranians saying the straits are closed. You know, U.S. warships have been running up and down the straits for weeks and haven't hit any mines. The insurance companies are closing the straits. So I think what you're seeing is the IRGC is trying a last-ditch effort to do something with its little small boats, as you saw in the previous report, that 4 small boats were sunk by the United States Navy. So I think this is showing how the strength of the United States Navy is working.
Okay, so this is U.S. Central Command Admiral Brad Cooper just a short time ago on the cruise missiles going after those Navy ships and the commercial shipping.
The cruise missiles were going after both U.S. Navy ships, but mostly after commercial shipping. We defended both ourselves, and consistent with our commitment, we defended all the commercial ships. We've had drone launches against commercial ships, all of which were defended against, consistent with our commitment. And then the small boats were all going against commercial ships, and all were sunk by Apaches and Seahawk helicopters.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, this is pretty impressive. The United States Navy has a tremendous ship defense. We have the Aegis missile defense system to get incoming missiles, and then we have the CWIS, the close-in weapon system. They call it the R2-D2 of death because it looks like the small character from the Star Wars movies with a giant machine gun that shoots 2,000 rounds a minute. And so we have enormous defenses to protect against the missiles coming into U.S. ships. And then using the helicopters, we're essentially hunting the IRGC in the terrain that they're calling their own. So we're not sending big ships to squash a little mosquito. We're sending helicopters to shoot after the IRGC that's threatening the international shipping.
Colonel, this is more from Cooper a short time ago on degrading Iran's military capability. Listen.
I'll give you just an example just from this morning. In my own experience, I've transited through the Strait of Hormuz probably 100 times in my career. You typically see between 20 and 40 small boats in a pack coming out. Today we saw 6. And eliminated them quickly. I think this is an example of the degradation of their capability. It doesn't mean it's all gone, but it's highly degraded. You
see it the same way, Colonel?
I completely agree. When I went through the Straits of Hormuz back after the Iraq War, it's a high attention area. Everybody's paying attention. I agree with the Admiral's assessment that the aggressive tactics and traffic has reduced, because even before a time of war and conflict, the Iranians were always kind of threatening all the shipping by showing a display of force. That only 6 little small boats came out. We saw them coming and we destroyed them all. The Iranians really don't have anything to say that they can close the straits with.
Got it. I'll finish off with this, Colonel. The blockade damage to the Iranian economy. Clearly, it's showing up in the numbers. I mean, you talk about $435 million. That's the estimate on the amount this is costing them per day. The longer this goes on, it's easy to see where this is going. Final thought, Colonel?
Yeah, I think that Al Jazeera reported that the Iranian rial currency is at its lowest ever. Twice in the last 2 months, they've increased their currency denominations by 5 million and 10 million rial units of currency. And what you're seeing here is the economic arm of the military and the United States might that we're flexing the economics. And I think the economics are going to have a greater effect than the military attacks did.
Got it. Colonel, thank you very much for your time today, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.